So because I lost my voice for 8 years and 23 doctors couldn't help me figure out how to fix that, and part of the problem was acid reflux, we talk a lot on this channel about how to fix different digestive malfunctions and digestive symptoms. So it was over on our video on should I avoid enzymes with acid reflux that user Quantum something or other asked, I'm sorry if you've explained this before, but how do you know how many HCl to work up to? I don't ever get a warming feeling. And this seems to be a pretty confusing topic for a lot of people, and Betaine HCL supplementation is a way that people use to supplement with these HCl capsules to help acidify the stomach when the body is not making enough of its own HCl. But there's a lot of confusion about this warming sensation that people talk about. So in this video, I'm going to help you understand how to figure out a dose that will be appropriate for you and what you have going on. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So just remember, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving you medical advice, and I don't know user Quantum, whatever that was, so I don't know their situation. I couldn't possibly be giving them advice, but we can talk about some of these things in general. And before somebody in the comments says, hey, whippersnapper, my doctor never done told me to take any Betaine HCL capsules. And yeah, I know 23 different doctors never told me to do that either, but there are doctors and people doing this around the world for a very long time with a lot of success. And in the description below this video, I'm going to share a study that goes through this, and we'll look through some of this, but you can jump into that and dig into it and see that this is in the medical literature. It's just not in most doctors' training. Most doctors are just taught how to turn off stomach acid to relieve symptoms. But we'll look at this study here on mealtime supplementation with Betaine HCL for functional hypochlorhydria. And what they did in this study is they basically created hypochlorhydria. Hypochlorhydria is a condition where a person is not making enough stomach acid to really acidify their food and break that food down and get the nutrients out of that food. That's kind of why we eat food, right? So what this study did is they kind of created hypochlorhydria by using a PPI medication, like an acid reflux medication, to turn off the stomach acid with these people in the study. And then they would see the symptoms that would come up, and they go through and like, oh, well, bloating and acid reflux and burping and indigestion and dyspepsia, all these symptoms that come up when a person doesn't have enough stomach acid to break their food down. And then they would supplement with this Betaine HCL capsules during their meal, and they showed that, oh wow, we can kind of fix all of these symptoms. And so we can understand by looking at that a person doesn't need to be using a PPI to have low stomach acid. There's a wide variety of reasons that someone might not be making enough stomach acid. So what they do here is they kind of go through the steps of a typical protocol for a person to figure out how much HCl they should really be using that would be appropriate and that would really help them digest their food correctly. So I won't read through all this, that'll be boring, but let's talk about some of the real signs that they're telling you to look for. And when we look at this warming sensation, you hear a lot of people talk about this, and 20 years ago this is what we used to tell people too. When I first started supplementing with Betaine HCL, I worked up to like 13 capsules per meal, and I still wasn't feeling this warming that people would tell you that is going to come. So basically the idea that a lot of people will tell you is that you supplement with 1 capsule of Betaine HCL for your first meal with protein. It should be a meal with protein. And if you don't feel any discomfort or warming sensation, then the next meal you would move up to 2 capsules, and you would continue to move up until you felt this warming sensation that was telling you, okay, you now have too much stomach acid in there, so the next meal you would want to back off. So this excess HCl was creating this warming sensation that was telling you that you've reached your dose, and I'm up to like 13, I got nothing. So it's just not true. And even this study here, they go through that you should increase by 1 until you feel some type of discomfort. So we're going to go through why real life this doesn't really happen like this. So they talk about that if you feel like a tingling or burning, heartburn or diarrhea, that you have exceeded the dose that you really need and you should go back down to whatever dose you are tolerating. And they do talk about that the max dose that you should really get to is about 3,000 milligrams. And most HCL capsules are going to be around 500. The ones that we use are around 515. And so we agree with that. We find that we tell our clients the maximum dose you should get to is 5 capsules. And we'll talk about that a little bit here. But they talk about that if you experience any of these things, well, that's too much. Well, here's why that doesn't really work in the real world. A lot of people will experience these things on the first dose of one. And it's actually a magnification of problems going wrong. It's not always a sign that, oh, you've reached the dose above what you really need. You can back down now. So let's look at this. A tingling or, any type of burning in the stomach type of thing. A lot of times if a person has gastritis or some type of gastric ulcer or something, those come about from a bacterial infection in the stomach. Some type of infection here in the stomach that is creating all this inflammation. Gastritis and ulcers are not caused by too much stomach acid like we thought in the 80s when we were wearing parachute pants. It's actually usually caused by some type of bacterial overgrowth. And usually that overgrowth got into the stomach and set up camp because there was not enough stomach acid there. That stomach acid is not just there to help us acidify and break down our food. It's the barrier that keeps the bad guys from coming in. So if somebody has gastritis or some type of ulcer, they could put one capsule in there and they're going to feel this tingling or burning or major burning. And that doesn't mean that they don't need more HCL. If they have an overgrowth of bacteria in there, then that stomach is likely very alkaline. A lot of times the waste byproducts that these bacterial overgrowths kind of put out can be alkaline, and they're kind of alkalizing that stomach environment, making it more hospitable for them. So a lot of times those alkaline wastes will neutralize the small amount of acid that a person is making or what a person is supplementing with. So, but if somebody has a gastritis and they're having significant pain or burning when they take HCL, they wouldn't want to take HCL. They would first want to fix that gastritis problem, and then they could qualify to properly acidify the stomach so that they can break down their food and get nutrients out of the food, but also so they can close the front door so more bad guys are not coming in. I'm not going to get into all that right here, but I'll put a link in the description below for our video on gastritis, a different viewpoint, and you can go into that if you need to. But when we're looking at things like heartburn, well, that's really common to see a magnification of heartburn when somebody first starts taking HCL. In most cases of heartburn, it's actually caused by a lack of stomach acid. There's this valve here, an LES valve, lower esophageal sphincter, that's supposed to open so food could come in, but then it closes so things don't come back up and burn us. The problem is that LES valve is triggered by stomach acid. So if someone doesn't have enough stomach acid to trigger that valve to close, then the small amount of acid has the ability to come back up and burn us. So if somebody starts supplementing with HCL and they just put in one capsule and that's not enough to truly acidify the stomach and trigger that valve to close, then they're going to increase the amount of stomach acid that's going to be coming back up. Now they put more acid in there. It's not yet enough to trigger it to work correctly, but it's an increase, so they're going to have a magnification of reflux. They may have not had reflux at all before because they didn't have any stomach acid there. Things could have been coming back up, but they wouldn't feel them because there's no burning, because there's no acid. So someone could do one HCL, and then they're saying, well, here, oh, if you get heartburn, then you know you got too much, and you can go back to the dose you were doing. Well, the dose they were doing was 0. So now they're just, oh, well, Betaine HCL wasn't for me. I don't need that because I showed myself that when I put 1 in, I got heartburn, so that was a signal that I put in too much. Well, what most people need to do is actually acidify the stomach more so now they can trigger that valve to close. We've heard from thousands of people, not hundreds, literally thousands of people over a decade that have told us that they experienced an increase of heartburn when they first started HCL, but as they increased the dose, that heartburn stopped and it went away because now this LES valve is closed because it was triggered to close. And this study mentions diarrhea, which is important to pay attention to because if you increase stomach acid here, as these acids leave the stomach, they need to be neutralized by alkaline bile that come down from the gallbladder and also bicarb that comes out of this pancreas here. Those help neutralize these acids. But it's really common for someone's bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, especially if they don't have enough stomach acid. The stomach acid coming down here into the duodenum is one of the major triggers to tell the gallbladder to send that bile down there. So when someone doesn't have enough stomach acid, now the gallbladder is not going to be triggered as often, and that bile will stay in there and continue to concentrate, and it'll become too thick and sticky to flow, and then it won't flow out. So now someone starts to increase their stomach acid. Now they put more acid in here. So now more acid is coming out, and it's triggering the gallbladder, but the bile is all gooky and it's not flowing correctly, so it doesn't come down to help neutralize the acids and signal the pancreas and all these other things that kind of happen together. So these acids continue to move through, and now they're too hot for this area. So the body's like, oh, that's going to burn a hole in me. I'm going to bring all the water that I can to this area to cool it down and then rush it out the back door. So a person will get diarrhea when they increase stomach acid if other things are not working correctly. So again, according to this study and what people say, that's going to tell the person, oh, you don't need more stomach acid. Look, it made diarrhea for you. But the reality was they had both sides of digestion malfunctioning. They didn't have enough stomach acid and bile wasn't flowing. So in a situation like that, a person should not continue to use Betaine HCL if it's creating diarrhea. Diarrhea is a big problem that you don't want to have. But understanding other signs of poor bile flow could let them know that, oh, that makes sense that I have diarrhea because I need to improve this bile flow. And if they improve this bile flow, then they could acidify the stomach and everything would work correctly. So if you're new to this channel and you don't know how to improve these digestive malfunctions like we're talking about, my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, chapters 3 and 4, kind of walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and steps you can take to improve those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free, and then you can just jump to chapters 3 and 4 to figure that out. So other things that we need to think about when we're looking at these signs that could show up are we need to think about an overgrowth. If somebody has that bacterial overgrowth there and it's putting out all this alkaline waste, well, they could put in 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 capsules of HCl. But if this is all alkaline, then that alkaline waste is going to neutralize all that HCl. So they may not start to improve any symptoms. They're certainly not going to feel this warming sensation that this user was talking about. So they may need to reduce an overgrowth that could be neutralizing acids and creating a lot of trouble and kind of neutralizing the effects of that HCl. So here's one thing to understand about this warming. Most people never feel the warming sensation. They just don't. They have enough mucus lining that they just don't feel that warming sensation. It's not a good judge to use. What we like to see people do is, have you improved your digestive symptoms that were a sign of this low stomach acid going on? And we'll put a link to our video for 10 signs of low stomach acid if you need to understand those a little bit better. But once a person improves those symptoms, now they know they're acidifying that stomach the way that it should. And we have to understand, is bile flowing correctly so we don't create diarrhea? We have to understand, are we acidifying this enough to trigger this LES valve to close? And also somebody might have a hiatal hernia that's restricting that from closing, so that's a possibility. We want to understand, is gastritis creating some of this discomfort, or bloating type things? A lot of people, when they first start taking HCl, will get a magnification of symptoms like, bloating or something like that. And what's going on is that this acid coming in is mixing with all the alkaline byproduct from some type of bacterial overgrowth in the stomach, and that opposite pH is colliding in the stomach where that shouldn't be happening, creates like this fizzy mess that creates a lot of discomfort for people. Maybe it makes them magnify their bloating or nausea, or they just don't feel very good. So that's very common, and so they view that as, oh wow, HCl wasn't right for me, but they really need to take care of some type of overgrowth situation. And when they knock that down and there's not all this alkaline waste in there, then they'll be able to acidify that stomach correctly without magnifying or creating new symptoms. Another thing to think about is that most HCl products sold to the public now contain pepsin. And pepsin is this thing that kind of helps us break down proteins a little bit better. It can be really beneficial, but we don't have clients supplement with HCl that contains pepsin. because most people need to work up to this higher dose of like 5 per meal, like we're kind of talking about this study says to do. But when you increase the amount of pepsin that you're bringing in like that, it can create a lot of discomfort for a lot of people. So they're taking this HCl with pepsin, they get up to a dose that's probably appropriate for them, but they really don't feel good because of the high level of pepsin that they're putting in the system. The body should make pepsin anyways, it just needs an acidic environment to activate it. So a person usually doesn't really need to supplement with pepsin. I'll put a link in the description below to the HCl that we use that does not contain pepsin. I'm not saying that you need to use that. We're not the manufacturer. I don't care if you use it. I just know you're going to want to see it when I talk about it. But we like to use one that does not contain pepsin so that they're not creating discomfort and getting confused about how much they really need to use. But the other thing we need to think about is we don't know how much HCl the body is already producing. We don't know, is it just being neutralized by some infection that got in there, or is the body not able to really produce it? There's a wide variety of reasons that the body is not able to make HCl. And once that happens, now you can't really break your food down correctly, which means you can't really get all the minerals out of that food. And now the body doesn't have minerals and resources that it needs to make the HCl. So a person can get stuck in this broken cycle of digestion for years or decades once it goes wrong. So we need to understand that since we don't know how much is it producing, this thing where people say, and in the study where they say start with 1 and work your way up, that's the right way to do it. Because if your body's already making, 3 or 4 or 5 capsules worth of HCl and you go adding more in there, then it's going to really magnify some trouble for you. So by starting with 1 and increasing each meal or 2, that contains protein. You don't want to use HCl with a meal that doesn't contain protein because we really need HCl to break down protein. But if you have a meal without protein and you took like 5 HCl, it would create discomfort because that's a lot more acid that is really needed. But when a person can just increase by 1, now if they get up to 5 and they're still having, oh, I'm still bloated or I'm still constipated, and there's other reasons for constipation too. We talk about that in a lot of videos, but any of these symptoms that a person's dealing with, they get up to a full dose and they still have some of those symptoms. We don't usually have clients go up to 6, 7, or 8 HCl capsules per meal because it's viewed that the maximum dose that the stomach is going to make is about 5 capsules worth, or about 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams of HCl is about what the body is going to make anyways. So if a person needs more HCl than that, it's usually because an overgrowth is neutralizing those acids. So instead of just saying, I'm going to take a couple of swigs of HCl capsules and get 15 or 20 in there, that's just not what the body would do. We want to take steps to reduce the overgrowth instead. So when 5 is not enough, that's a really strong sign of an overgrowth, and we want to take steps to wipe those out. We'll put a link in the description below for our video on how to wipe out bacterial overgrowth in the stomach. So you can see this is not simple, right? I can't just give you, just take this, because that's not going to work for you. You can also see that a lot of people have work they have to do to get this to work for them. But a lack of stomach acid, it creates a lot of trouble in the body, not just digestive symptoms. It's restricting your ability to get nutrients from the food. And we know that nutrient deficiencies create a wide variety of health problems. So this is a really big deal. And when effort is needed to make it work for you, it's absolutely worth it. In the description, I'm just going to put a list of different videos we have on HCl topics just because this is a complicated topic where people really need help sometimes. And we have videos on, possible trouble that can come about when you first start HCl. We have videos on how long should you use HCl. So I'll just put all those below so you can check those out. And hopefully this gives you some insights into why a lot of people don't feel that warming, and it's really not a good judge to figure out what you need and how to figure out what's really going to be right for you. But right now, if you want to learn more about reducing a need for HCl so that you don't need to supplement it with it anymore, you can jump over and check out our video on how to help the body make more HCl naturally. I can't wait to hear about your results.